Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Peter Jennings. I go by CSU Ram 88 across the daily fantasy industry, and back again at Fantasy Labs doing another model preview for the Dean and DeLuca Invitational, or the Colonial. I'll go through the sliders first, just like normal, and then we'll talk about some of the players. But certainly an interesting course and definitely a ball striking course. So this goes against what we normally do, especially with DraftKings, is we're normally looking at bombers. In general, bombers make more birdies, and there's opportunities for eagles for the bombers, but this course really rewards driving accuracy. So the bombers actually aren't weighted at all. So we start here looking at the sliders. I have long-term adjusted around at 20. I lowered it just a little bit more than normal. It's still in the kind of the same range. I love the stat, but I lowered it just a little bit just to get some more points on a couple other specific things. I have long-term green regulation score at 10 points. That's the other key here. It's driving accuracy and greens and regulation. I have driving accuracy long-term at 5 points. I actually weighted the more recent stuff a lot more, which we can talk a little bit about here in a second. So we scroll down here. I have recent adjusted around at 8 points. And then I have recent greens and regulation score at 35 points. So almost every week my model is made up of long-term adjusted round and recent green and regulation score. I think that's a great way to capture golfers who've been good historically and guys who might be undervalued based on their recent performance with the long-term adjusted round, but still capturing the guys who are in great current form, especially with greens and regulation, which to me identifies the guys who are striking the ball really well, and it eliminates some of the noise just by going off a recent adjusted round score that putting would have. So someone who putted amazing but wasn't hitting the ball great could still have a great recent adjusted round score, but they're not going to have great green regulation scores most likely. All right, so no driving distance again, like I talked about. Recent driving accuracy score at 10 points, did that more heavily than the long term, and I really think, and this could be wrong. I'll definitely talk to Colin a little bit more about it, and I'm definitely open to feedback on this. But I really want to gauge the guys that are striking the ball well, and I'm really trying to capture that with the recent green regulation score and the driving accuracy score. So I did weight it a little bit more, but you can sense the theme here. It's just driving accuracy and greens and regulation, which is what Colin said on the podcast. And then I did something interesting. I weighted a slider I haven't weighted, really ever, the course green regulation score, and then I adjusted the course adjusted round score to 9 points, which is kind of average, maybe a little below average what I normally do. So that's the model this week. I've made a lot of different models, and again, I always encourage you guys to go and make different models and see who pops based on how you set up the model. And I think that's important too is potentially to identify some of these guys that you might want to X out as well. Looking at the players, so I love Grillo. Talked about him. He's an accuracy guy, great green regulation, which is what's pulling him up so much in the model. And last time we rolled him out, he missed the cut by I believe 1 stroke, and hopefully that's not the case here this week. So I like Grillo a lot. I'll probably have a good amount of exposure to him. Duffner's rating well. He's really kind of found his groove, and he's a guy that hits a pretty good amount of greens, somewhat accurate. If you look through here and see why he's popping, his recent green regulation is really high. Not Kramer Hickok, which is why he's popping. I figured out why he's popping, but he has really nice green regulations recently, and I think that Duffner's a nice play. So Hickok, he's the guy that I'm probably going to X out, but I might throw him on one tournament team. Just one. I've X'd guys out completely in the past, and somehow they seem to do well in the model. I mean, if you look at Hickok and just his game log, it's not pretty. I mean, he has, no terrible rounds, but 2 missed cuts and a withdrawal for the BMW Charity Pro-Am. I'm gonna fade Hickok. He's really getting bumped up by his green regulation score in that tournament in this particular model. So I think I'm gonna have to take him out in general. But I am curious to see what happens if I play him in like one tournament team. But it makes sense to me why he's popping. It's just strictly that green and regulation score from the previous tournament. Colt Knost, love the play. I think he's an elite cash game play. I expect him to be in a lot of cash game teams. I probably will have less of him in tournaments because I think he's going to be very popular, but I could be wrong. I need to do some more research on that. Great driver of the ball in terms of accuracy. You see that here. Does hit a decent amount of greens. If we look at his recent form here for Knost, it's just been incredible accuracy. His green regulation's about the same, but his accuracy's just been incredible off the tee. And that's something that you really need to do at this tournament. So I like him quite a bit. Right below him is Matt Kuchar, my favorite expensive play of the week. This guy's more top 10s, I believe, since 2010 than anyone on the PGA Tour. Saw that stat. Absolutely incredible how well he just plays on a consistent basis. So he's a cash game play for me. I might look at a couple other guys for tournaments, but we'll see what happens with Kuchar. But I definitely like him for cash. Spieth is still rating high. I'm not really on Spieth as much. I think he's a decent tournament play, but the more I think about it, he's going to be 15 to 20% owned regardless, even after his poor finish last week, and that kind of makes him less enticing for me. I'm not going to be on Louis at all. Like Glover, but again, struggling to take the guys who can't putt well. Adam Scott, elite tournament play for me. Kevin Chappell, another guy who I'm going to have a lot of exposure to in tournaments. Guy's been playing lights out. And this is something that you just got to look through the game logs. I mean, you look at this stretch. You got second. I mean, you know he missed the cut, but then a ninth, a fourth, a 41st, and a second. I mean, you're looking at in the last 6 tournaments, 3 top 5s, 4 top 10s. I mean, he's hot, and his recent form is great, and he's right there. And you look at his most recent at the Players, he was just hitting a ton of greens, which I'd love to see. Ches Reavie, Fantasy Labs favorite, like him. Love Bill Haas. I mean, these are accurate drivers of the golf ball. I think they're really nice. Haas is kind of in a tricky price range because I like some guys more. Going farther down here, we see Zach Johnson, who has great course history here. And he's an accurate driver of the golf ball. He's a classic, kind of short game wedge player who hits the ball accurately. So this should set up well for him, and it has. If we scroll through and look at Zach Johnson's course history, he has a 68.3, which is just a great adjusted round. Hadwin also, too, who I didn't talk about, has a great course adjusted round, but only one time. So that's one thing, too, that I wanted to point out for this specific model preview is make sure you're identifying when you're looking at their adjusted round for the course, how many times they played the course. So I value this 68.3 a lot more than I evaluate this 68.1 because it's a 1 count versus 7 count. So make sure you're leveraging that, and certainly something that Colin's going to get into a lot more just in general with about how to value course history and how to look at it. So interesting on Zach Johnson. Keegan Bradley, never again, even at 6,800, not going to play him. Von Taylor, David Hearn, I probably won't have too much exposure to. I do think Jim Furyk's interesting at this price, considering how he normally plays. Definitely going to take some flyers on him in tournaments. Kevin Na kind of fits this spot. The one thing that's interesting to me, just kind of scrolling through the rest of these guys, is looking at how low a couple golfers that I'll most likely use are. And that one guy in particular that I kind of want to end this model preview on is Ryan Palmer. So he is a member here, and I'm going to take that into account. Last year, Ryan Palmer missed the cut by 1 stroke by double bogeying the 18th hole. He had a 100-yard wedge into the 18th green and put it in the water. He got a bogey on 18 last week. Ryan Palmer has probably cost me more money than any other golfer on the PGA Tour, and I'm going to get back on the Ryan Palmer bandwagon. I'm not going to let the recency bias affect me. I think he's a nice play and a guy that I'm going to take. I mean, you look at his stats. His long-term form is fine. He has great adjusted round. I mean, he does hit the ball farther than most that are really accurate, but he still has good green regulation. His driving accuracy has been bad long-term. But if we scroll through and kind of look at some other stats, they're not great. But I'm gonna weigh the member angle a bit more, and I just think he's a better golfer than 8,100. But the reason he's ranking so low in this model is clearly these driving accuracy and green regulation stats for both long and short term, or long and recent form. So interesting case. I wonder how much exposure I'll end up having him. I'll probably make a couple cash game lineups this week. But I definitely am going to have exposure to him in one, and I like him for tournaments as well. Just depends on his ownership, too. So, Kisner, another play. We'll see. I think people on. And just kind of scrolling through, one other name that I guess caught my eye is Schwartzel, who I do like at that price of $9,000. So, hope this helps. Bryson DeChambeau has been burning me, so I'm not going to spend any time on him. But, yeah, interesting week. A lot of great golfers to choose from. Fun tournament week. We also have the Euro Tour, which I'm ecstatic about, and I might be doing some model previews for that as well coming up. So would love any feedback that you guys have. And, of course, always looking forward to seeing Fantasy Lab subscribers at the top of the leaderboard.